Absolutely. So I want to try and pull together some of the things that you've been hearing about this morning. There's been a wide range of subjects discovered, and in particular, the last subject was about plants. Now, Guernsey, I know, is going to become a green haven of blue survivability, and the fundamental core for this is going to be based around your ability to raise, produce, and provide food. And optimal health, which is really the only way you're going to reach 100 and still be enjoying it, starts with optimal food. And optimal food starts with optimal soil. What kind of soil are your foods coming from? If we're going to get to the root cause, pun intended, of longevity, we need to look at where our food comes from. Because the single greatest leverage point for a sustainable and healthy future for the 63,000 people that currently live here, but once Michelle's made you a blue zone, it'll be 150,000, is underneath your feet, the living soil where you grow your food. And I'm going to take you through a little bit of a journey. I'm going to blend together microbiology, immunology, agriculture, fertilizer, agribusiness and technology, and produce for you a solution at the end, which I hope you'll all understand. So human health is influenced, I would say, both directly and indirectly by the choice of agricultural production methods that people are employing. We're anticipated to have a global population of 9 billion people by 2050, which means we have to grow food production at the rate of 2.5% per year in order to meet that sustainability, on the basis that nobody improves the way that they produce food production now or improves their waste management of the food that they do now. And as a result, agriculture has moved to large-scale farming using practices, stand in my blue circle, using practices that do not favor the health of the plant. You see, plants generally don't like to be eaten. They prefer to have a happy, long existence and then decompose into the soil. And to put you off eating them, they produce a variety of immunological compounds that produce a bitter taste. And those bitters can be magnified or specialized to produce a particular outcome, but they rely on the quality of the nutrients within the soil. And we learned today about geography having a major impact on the environmental effect on plants' growth. The healthier a plant, the more its immune system can communicate with yours. And you are uniquely programmed to receive information from plants and translate that into biological responses which no drug could ever possibly replicate. But if the information you're receiving is incomplete or of a substandard nature, your ability to maintain the benefit from that plant will disappear, and you drift then towards either pharmacological or supplemental support. The key to the success of a healthy plant is biodiversity, a biological milieu, an ecological environment that confers an advantage for the translation of its nutrient availability to the roots of the plants for their conversion into both growth, nutrient density, and immunological capacity. Yet the very cornerstone of agricultural intensification, driven to satisfy the wasteful need of the majority population for food predicated around calorific content rather than nutritional density, has been this massive increase in ploughing and agricultural utilization of fertilizers and mechanisms for killing off pathogens. All of which has a downstream consequence of diminishing the biodiversity of the soil in which your food is grown. We're losing soils and that microbiological community at a rapid pace. And this has substantial consequences for everybody here, not just for this year, but for every year going forward. And if Guernsey is going to project itself forward as a place, in fact anywhere wants to project itself forward as a place for a long and healthy lifespan, we need to look further than the discussions we've been having so far. We need to go back to the soil. It's a massively underutilized resource for long-term sustainability. We take it for granted. We rip it apart. We inadequately replace nutrients into it, and then we kill every living organism in it in order to protect, primarily, biotechnology patents. You see, biodiversity in soils is connected to all life and provides a massive, fundamental, foundational base, an ecological foundation for every other healthcare discipline to be able to thrive from or survive from. This is the absolute root of human sustainability and health. Yet we are so badly abusing our soils that back in 2014, a paper in the Journal of Applied Ecology calculated that when they looked at the soils in local urban allotments and compared the nutritional and biological diversity in those soils with the fields that have been utilized to produce mass food production, that in the UK, they estimated we had only 100 growing seasons left before those soils were incapable of satisfying agricultural needs for food supply. Now, one can always extrapolate 100 years ahead and make wild and drastic guesses about what might happen. We don't really know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. But as it's a 100-year conference, I thought I'd choose that quote, because what they're saying fundamentally is that we are drifting rapidly away from understanding that agricultural techniques no longer satisfy health requirements. And if we don't make a correction in that pathway, many disturbing things will occur. So I'm just going to drift slightly into the use of microbes or bacteria and immunological functionality in humans and in plants. It's quite clear that none of you in this room could survive, function, think, or engage in life without the bacterial community that predominantly resides in your large colon. They're your underpaid, undernourished, and undervalued employees that you take for granted. Most people deny or are unaware of their existence and torture them, and then are surprised when they go on strike. The consequence of which is unmitigated disaster, identified initially as persistent unwanted inflammation, which you've been hearing about today. The most important mechanism for controlling appropriate responses to different types of triggers are that shared relationship between the organisms that live inside of you and the food in which you consume to feed them. If you continue to starve your staff, they will not turn up to work. If you feed them well, they have raging gene-swapping parties going on in your colon, which produces a massive range of functional benefits for you that you can appreciate only later, and you don't need MDMA to make them happy. Yet, the microbiome, which has received billions of dollars of investigational work, relies almost entirely on another organizational structure which we refer to as a phytobiome. That means the organisms in the soil, the environment in which the soil is placed, and the plants in which that environment is shared. You see, the plant microbiome plays a similar role to the mammalian counterpart present inside your gut. It helps the immune system of the plant to adapt to its environment. If you remove that relationship, you have to use pesticides and herbicides to compensate. If Guernsey is going to become the next shiny blue zone, changing agricultural practices to restore vitality to soil, to reduce interdependence on agri-chemicals, and enhance plant health is a fundamental cornerstone of everything that takes place. You see, as Darwin says, it's not the strongest of the species who survives to be 100 years, but the most adaptable. On average, you have 50% less bacteria diversity in your gut than the Hadza tribe, who are a nomadic gathering tribe in Tanzania. You are less than half as efficient at managing challenges than your immediate counterparts still living a mobile, multi-nutrient ingesting lifestyle. The consequence of this information has been producing a massive shift in biology, and people are now seen as the aggregation of their environment, of both biological tissues and bacterial, fungal, and other type of tissues around them. And there's a term being coined for this called the holobiont, or the holobiont. That is the combination of both your environment and you. So I thought maybe we should call Guernsey an island of holobionts. Maybe this is a new term. We should be the holobiont of Guernsey. And to do this, we have to shift concepts in much the same way we've been trying to do in medicine. For the last 25 years, I've been involved in teaching functional medicine. We've been trying to shift concepts away from silo medicine into the traditional concept of a holism around a structure that makes sense. And we have to do the same in farming. We have to make a paradigm shift in the way that people produce their food going forward. We have to take into consideration this phytobiomic relationship and feed that series of organisms differently, because the way that we've been currently feeding them is primarily down to what was known as the Haber-Bosch response developed in Germany, where nitrogen is sucked out from the air and provided as a fertilizer, for which half the crops in the world rely on nitrogen to generate their growth. Yet nitrogen leaches back into the atmosphere, leaches into the rivers, leaches into the seas, and ultimately erodes your environment. You will not be able to do forest bathing. You will not be able to do environmental engagement if nitrogen leaching continues, although it has been contained over the last few years, to grow as it is doing. We need to think of a different way of feeding us through a holobiont feeding of the organisms in the soil. Because if we can create healthy soil, healthy plants, and healthy animals, you'll become healthy people. And just as antibiotics indiscriminately, as you learnt a little bit about today, change the ecological balance of bacteria in your gut, the use of many pesticides and herbicides sprayed in our plants do the same. But there is light at the end of a tunnel. I don't want you leaving here morbidly depressed, thinking it's not worth living to 100, because I'm only going to get some grotty old apple which will be covered in pesticides. I want to give you some idea that what can be done, because part of my life, as Rangan alluded to, I have a kind of a weird world. I'm involved in all types of different research and different types of activities. But I wanted to summarize. On the right-hand side, that's Guernsey, with people living to 100. They've got pests and pathogens in soils naturally inhibited by a competing mechanism from the soil rich in microbial diversity that produces wonderful, nutrient-dense foods full of bitter compounds, but are not so intense you can't consume them, but are metabolically and immunologically vital to long-term health. We don't want Guernsey to be the intensive farming environment in which purely the production of material is the target, because simply producing volume denies the quality that you need to survive to be a healthy 100 years of age. Hence, Guernsey is going to be made agriculturally sustainable, and this is one of the methods you might be able to use. For the last 5 years, I've been working in research with Rothamsted, which is the oldest fertilizer research institute in the world. And I have a team of colleagues, and we've been working and developing a mechanism for extracting nutrients that were previously lost in the food chain, repurposing them, recombining them using a unique type of chemical, pressure, and heat mechanism to produce an organic gloop that plants recognize as a bioidentical food familiar to that which they would have seen 1 billion years ago, taking nutrients and producing an incredible array of bioavailability so that plants translate that information through the improved microbiome or the phytobiome in the soil to nutrient density in the plants that transfers through into the food chain to a healthier animal. Using a stage release, micronutrient and carbon-rich fertilizer, we return minerals that were previously lost to waste into the food stream and into the environment through a grass-to-grass process. It's a complete circular event. So here's my little green building to make you feel I'm green and lovely. We've developed a disruptive reimagined engineering process that captures material at the back of abattoirs that were previously problematic. And we combine these with impure acids that were previously lost to the environment or polluted into the environment, and then run this through a highly sophisticated chemical compounding machine that produces a fertile, nutrient-dense fertilizer which you can place onto the soil. And what our studies have shown us is we see a significant enhancement of plant nutrient uptake, particularly on soils that are nutrient depleted, which is about 80% of all growing soils in the world. We see an increase in phytobiome viability. Organisms that were previously suppressed begin to grow again. We see an enhancement of the nutrient availability through the biological interaction with these nutrients for plants. We include around 50 highly customizable nutrients in the fertilizer and add back between 9 and 13% of carbon. We effectively shorten a 30-year period of soil being left to recover carbon naturally to a period of 5 to 6 years. We see an increase in total yield of around 70% on poor soils. It's fully customizable and it contains no heavy metals. Plants' immune systems are also enhanced. There's a significantly reduced risk of eutrophication, which is where nitrogen leaches into waters, and it consumes 65 times less energy to produce 1 ton of this fertilizer than conventional fertilizer. It's also entirely biosecure, and for those of you in the room who are farmers, it's comparable in price. So what I wanted to summarize as I come to the end of my chat for you. This morning, you were given a fabulous journey through environmental areas in which the population favor longevity, not simply by struggling to the age of 100, but by living to the age of 100. And a key feature of that is farming practices and the availability of food and the locality of food. And the one thing that Guernsey can think about doing more easily than many areas is the restoration of the phytobiome, which facilitates the optimization of the human microbiome, which ultimately translates into far greater potential for a long and healthy life. Thank you very much.